Hi, Henny, how are you? It's Teknikolour. I am back with another speed build, and this time it is part of Pacific Creative's Playlist Creations build collaboration, which I was a part of. And we were tasked with making a build focused around a song. So I did Liza Minnelli's Ring Them Bells. Let's check it out. I was so excited to be invited by Pacific Creative for this build collaboration because I've only ever been invited to 2 build collaborations. Like, this is my second one. I was just like so thrilled because there's so many amazing, talented builders that she invited that I'm in the same collaboration as them. It's it was just like an honor to have been invited. So Pacific, thank you so much for inviting me. And if y'all are unaware, Pacific Creative is a lovely Sims creator that you can find on Twitch and YouTube. Go give her a follow right now. But anyway, you might notice that last week I didn't have a YouTube video, and I felt awful about that because I don't know, I just spread myself a little too thin, I think, and I just didn't have the time to get another YouTube video done. That's actually the first YouTube video that I have not posted this year because I had given myself a New Year's resolution where I would post 1 video every week. And we made it to October. Unfortunately, we missed 1 week. I don't know. Is that terrible? Is that terrible? Did I ruin my New Year's resolution? What do you think? Please tell me it's still all right. But I finally have a new YouTube video. This one is actually going to be in 2 parts because somehow the footage was too long. And even though I ended up cutting out a ton from this, it still was way too long when I sped up the footage. So you'll see in parts of this that it goes very, very quickly. Like when we were figuring out the actual like structure and like floor plan for the most part, it was sped up like a lot. So sorry about that. It was the only way I could get all this to fit and just be this quick. We're focusing on the 2 apartments for this week's video. And those 2 apartments are the ones that Liza actually references in her song, Ring Them Bells, which if you don't know this song, I highly recommend you go and you listen to it because it's one of my favorite songs. I actually didn't know what song to choose for this collaboration, and it took me a really long time. And actually, this was the first song that my boyfriend had suggested that I use. And I don't know, it's become sort of a thing for me, this song. I don't really know why. When I was younger, my parents tried to get me to watch this exact special that Liza, or later on, I guess, had performed. And I was not having it. I just like didn't see it. As a kid, I was just like not interested, but my parents must have known that I would be interested in it later. So thanks, Mom and Dad. So it was really funny because I don't remember when I started listening to Liza's music, but I started listening to Liza Minnelli's music probably a couple of years ago at one of my former jobs. I would just like listen to music while I was designing, and Liza was one of the people that I was listening to, and I became obsessed with this song. And my boyfriend and I, we actually went and saw a performance by my all-time favorite drag queen, Miss Coco Peru. If you're not following her, go follow her, because not following her, well, that bothers me. And that'll make sense if you're following her. But we finally got to see Miss Coco Peru. We had actually met her a couple of times at RuPaul's DragCon NYC, but we never got to see her perform. So we finally got to see her perform. And I don't think either of us knew that she was going to be doing this, but she performed Ring Them Bells in the show. And she was like, take out your keys, like take out whatever that could like jingle. And like the second she said that, I was like, oh my God, is she doing Ring Them Bells? My boyfriend and I, we just looked at each other like, oh. We were so excited, and she did a phenomenal job because she's Miss Coco Peru. But anyway, this song, I don't know, it means a lot to me. I don't really know why. It's not like I'm single or I've been single since I have heard this song, but basically the premise is there's this character Liza says it's a completely true story. I don't know if that's true because when I was researching this, there's actually, as far as I can tell, no 29th floor at 5 Riverside. At 5 Riverside Drive, which is where this story takes place. So I don't know. But anyway, there's this character named Shirley DeVore, and she's about to become 32 years old, and she's still living with her parents, and her parents are like, girl, you got to get out of here. They're like, we love you dearly, but you got to find somebody. You got to go out into the world. You got to ring them bells. So she ends up thinking about what she should do. She's unhappy that she's never been in love. And she decides that she is going to borrow $1,000, go to TWA, and travel the world until she hauls her home a husband. And the real funny part of this is Liza is basically singing about all these places and all these men that Shirley DeVore is meeting. And all of them are duds. She's not interested in any of them. And then she finally goes to Dubrovnik and she meets this guy on the beach who takes her reason away. And that guy's name is Norm Saperstein. And he lives at 5 Riverside Drive. Yes, the exact 5 Riverside Drive that Shirley DeVore lives at. And the apartment that he lives in is actually right across the hall. Are you getting it? So she basically travels around the world to meet the guy next door. And it is just like such a funny story. It is so good of a song that it just like gets stuck in your head and so happy. I don't know. I have loved this song for so long now. And when my boyfriend had approached me and said, I think this would be a good idea for you to do for the collab, I was like, I don't know, because I have so many songs that I love. Like growing up, my parents introduced my brother and I to music very early on. Like we would have like kind of like quizzes, but not like really. Like if you got it wrong, like it didn't matter. But my parents would like teach us about different genres and just teach us about the music world because they felt like that was important to life. And I think it is too. So learning music from a very young age, and you might not like every song, especially you might not even like the same music that your parents like, but the fact that your parents can spend the time to introduce you to different artists and genres, I think is a huge deal. And I'm so grateful that music has been a big part of my parents' life because it's been a big part of my life. Like for instance, one of my previous builds, I was a little burnt out and I did not know what to do. And I was really struggling with every build that I had done. And I had actually started listening to music that my mom would play and the two of us enjoyed while I was growing up. And I ended up pulling out one of my favorite builds ever. So it was just like really cool to, I don't know, grow up with music. So this build was very exciting for me because it kind of like, I don't know if it takes place in the 70s, the story, or if Liza just performed it for the first time in the 70s, but I focused on the 70s time period for this build. So I listened to a lot of 70s music. I actually started listening out to the album that Ring Them Bells is on, Liza with a Z. Not Lisa Minnelli. It's Liza. And so I listened to that album for like a little bit. And then I was like, okay, I have to listen to something else. And as much as I love Liza, I just couldn't do it for like a whole week. So I was listening to that like all out 70s playlist on Spotify while I was building this. And it was just so nice because I recognized like almost every single song. And I didn't love every single song or every artist, sorry to say, but I don't know. It was just, it kind of felt like I was getting a connection to my parents and also kind of thinking about like them growing up and trying to see, well, from pictures that I've seen or stories that they've told, does this seem like it would fit in to that time period while I was building? And I also got a lot of use out of the basement clutter kit. which I didn't have. I didn't have the Basement Treasures kit until I was doing this build. I was like, I need it. But I don't know. I had the time of my life doing this build. So Pacific, thank you so much for inviting me to this collaboration. I had the absolute best time. But going into this build, I knew that I didn't want it to just be the 2 apartments like directly across the hall from each other. I knew that I wanted there to be 4 apartments total. There was actually a time where I was going to do 5. But I decided 4 seems more manageable. I also left myself building this collab until the absolute last possible moment. I basically left myself a week to do this build, even though she had invited me like months prior. I don't know why. It took me a really long time to decide that I definitely wanted to do Ring the Bells, and that I definitely had an idea in mind for what I wanted to build for Ring the Bells. And it just took me a phenomenal amount of time. And then it was about like a week before that I was like, oh wait, this is due like at the end of the week. I have to work on this now. So I did, and I basically spent all of last week building this, which is why I didn't have a YouTube video done, because I had nothing built to make into a YouTube video, and I just didn't have the time to edit one or make one from scratch. So that's why we have this. And thankfully, this turned out to be a 2-parter. So you'll see the other 2 apartments next week. But this week, what I'm focusing on is the DeVore residence. So Shirley DeVore and her parents. I have that 2-bedroom that I've been making here. And I'm also going to do Norm Saperstein's. And I don't know. I just decided I was going to build the rooms how I wanted them to look. So I wanted a very 1970s sort of modern kind of upper apartment sort of thing for the parents. I knew that that was basically the plan going forward. I needed to make a very classic, in my opinion, 1970s apartment. And I needed to make it look like a family had lived here, and probably for a while. So I wanted it to look like maybe Shirley grew up here, and her bedroom might look a little childish. It might also look a little dated, even for the time period. So I wanted it to look like she also didn't really know who she was. Like, she took this trip to kind of like discover herself a little bit too. Like, yeah, she had things that she liked, but I don't know, there was no real story for her until this moment. And I decided that I wanted to incorporate a lot of the research that I had done for the 1970s and include it in this apartment. But for Shirley DeVore's bedroom, I needed it to be like she had traveled the world. So I added a whole bunch of different trinkets and stuff like that to the apartment, and specifically to her bedroom. So you could see that there's postcards that she sent home to her parents on the front door. But then Shirley's apartment has all of these different treasures that she has accumulated throughout her time looking for a husband. And I just had the best time decorating her apartment. And then I knew that I had to dismantle it, which might be a little confusing, but I wanted it to look as if she was actively moving out of her parents' apartment and into Norm's apartment during this like snapshot of her life. So I basically have her bedroom and everything set up the way that I want. And then I knew that certain things I would move and make it look as if I had moved certain items over already. So you'll see that a bit later on, but I added all of these photographs that she has framed and all these things that she's put on her wall. And I knew that a couple of those would end up moving over to Norm's apartment, and they would just be up in Norm's apartment. And there would be no real way for you to see, other than seeing me move them in the speed build, that they had moved. So I knew that I wanted there to be some sort of explanation as to how these items had moved. Like, I wanted it to be clear that there was something here before and it's not anymore. And there's like kind of like matching placements in Norm's apartment. And at first I was thinking, because we couldn't use custom content for this, I was thinking maybe I can find gallery art. Because you know how if you've had like a painting on the wall for like a very long time or something, there's usually like discoloration behind that painting. So if you take that painting off the wall, like whether it's dust or it's like sun damage or whatever, so like the paint is newer underneath that than it is for the rest of the wall. And it was impossible to find anything like that on the gallery. And it was impossible to find anything that would match the actual frames that we have in game, and especially like clusters of frames that are all one item. So I was like, this is not gonna work out. And then I thought, what if I use debug to make it look as if I have nails in the wall where she had hung up these paintings? Because like, they wouldn't have used like command strips. They would have used nails. Like, I don't even know if command strips existed back then, especially in the form that they are now. But I figured that would also be harder to create. So I figured if I put nails, because I don't think I can get nail holes, but if I can get nails in the exact placements of these frames, then I could just leave the nails and then move the frames. So it'd kind of look like, oh, well, this item must have been hanging in her bedroom because there's nails with no frames, but in his apartment now, these are hanging up. So that was kind of like my whole theory, what I was gonna do. And it took me a long time to come up with that concept, but I did. And I actually used these pins, which I think are for the postcards. So I used a bunch of those pins and just grabbed them and placed them. And it took a long time to set that up. So that part is actually sped up a lot. And it was just very interesting to get that part all together. So I don't know, I was very proud of how I came up with that. And that was probably one of my favorite parts of this build, because I wanted there to show that like snapshot in time that it's not just two separate apartments, it's actively moving in across the hall. So you'll see that there's some things at the front of the Devore apartment inside that show that she's going to be moving over. Like, for instance, there is a green sort of, I don't know, like console table in Norm's apartment that sort of looks a little bit out of place, but looks like it would be from Devore's room. So Shirley obviously like moved that over earlier, and there are some records. And there is a record player and some other records in the hall and in the front of Shirley Devore's apartment. So it's sort of like you're supposed to think, oh, well, those items have moved over. I don't know if it was successful. I hope it was, but it was very exciting to like have those ideas and then have them work in The Sims. And I think the only reason why it worked was because this is a penthouse apartment lot. So even though I didn't really make a penthouse apartment on it, I made a penthouse lot work for me, because you can't actually see the basement, but I did sink a lot of items into the basement. So whatever poor Sims live in the apartments underneath this, they just have random items coming through this ceiling. It's fine. It's fine. No big deal. Like, for instance, that record player is from the Party Essentials kit, and it's literally just sunk down into the floor of the Shirley Devore apartment. So the other part of it is literally just hanging from the ceiling in somebody else's apartment. So kind of funny to think about it that way. But I had a ton of fun. There's also there's like a cardboard dance floor, and that is in the middle of the two apartments in the hallway. So it kind of looks like they're required to put something down so they're not like scuffing the floor or anything like that, or they're not like damaging the hallway while they move things over, which like I feel like would be very typical of a co-op building or something like that. And I don't know, I was so excited to have all of the ideas that I had to show that Shirley had found her man and she was moving in next door. And I think it all just really came together. I'm very, very proud of this build. And a few of the things that I did that were kind of out of the ordinary for me were, there's also from the Basement Treasures kit, there are some lamps that are broken. So there's like a lamp base that is cracked and the lampshade is kind of like tilted and a little older looking. I tried to find swatches that didn't look like the lampshade was as damaged. So what I did was I found I found a vase that would kind of cover the base of that lamp. And then I also tooled that lamp into place so it would be hidden, the base of it, and then retilted the the lampshade so it would actually line up. I think technically that item has a little bit of flickering because it's meant to show that it's like not maybe like a new lamp, it's like a basement treasure and it's maybe not working as well, so it like flickers a little bit. So like in live mode I don't think it'll work, but I also don't think that this build is, I don't think that this build will actually work if you were to play in it. I did not play test it, so I don't think most of it will work, or I don't know, maybe most of it will, but like they'll maybe have some routing issues like with walking pathways because obviously clutter for Shirley moving in or moving out, depending on which way you look at it. I don't know. I just knew that I wanted to just make some sort of build that looked as if it, I don't know, would fit these two. And I feel really proud of this one. I feel like I accurately represented Shirley and her parents. And then I also accurately represented Norm and his new girlfriend moving in, you know? So it was just really exciting to do that. I also knew, because from the song, Norm's apartment is actually a junior 3, a swell junior 3, as he says in the song. So I knew that I wanted his to be, I don't know, like hoity-toity. I don't even know if that's a real word, but that's what my boyfriend had suggested to me when I was trying to figure out like what the look of Norm's apartment should be, because we don't know him as well from the song. So I knew that I wanted there to be some sort of like, oh, he's a little, I don't know, he's a little richer maybe. Yeah, he lives in the same building and he lives right next door. And his taste is obviously going to be maybe a little bit more elevated than Shirley's parents. But obviously like they own a 2-bedroom and he owns a junior 3, which is basically kind of, from the way I understood it, it's kind of like a studio apartment, but his bedroom kind of can fit in an alcove, so you can kind of separate it. And that's why I have like the divider there to show that it's sort of like a separate room, but it's really not. So I don't know. This would probably cost a lot of money too, this apartment. For New York City standards and like 5 Riverside Drive. Let's be honest. But yeah, I just had the time of my life building this. It took me so long to try to come up with what swatches I should use for like the overall apartments and the overall hallway and even the exterior. Like I was struggling to find what I would do for the hallway because I knew that I wanted it to be very New York City living. I wanted it to look like a New York City co-op building, but I knew that it also needed to look a little elevated and also have accurate items for New York City, if that makes sense. So like we couldn't really have like doors that had like super, like a lot of windows in them or looked very elevated, like they looked richer, because it just wouldn't work in New York City. And I definitely don't think it would have worked in the 70s. So the for rent doors, I think really came in clutch here. And yeah, they have the stained glass at the top, but I think that sort of fits still. I think that it sort of fits the time period. I feel like it sort of fits this building, the look of this building. Like, yeah, they've got like really nice floors, and I think I'm using the high school years wallpaper. I feel like that looks very in the time period for a building like this in New York City, and it might even still look like that. It might not look as nice as when they first installed it, but maybe they like recently installed it in the building at this point. I also made doorbells. I made custom doorbells. I tried to find something on the gallery that looked like a doorbell. I actually have a doorbell that's like a Ring doorbell that I use in my save. And I think it's really fun, but it's 100% like a Ring doorbell, like it's a video doorbell. So that won't really work for this time period. So I knew that I wanted there to look like an expensive bell. And I actually have a bell like this on my apartment. So like on the door frame, there's like a little bell that you press and it no longer works. It worked when we moved in here, but unfortunately it no longer works. So we had to get a new doorbell, which a little bit more on that later. But I knew with the doorbell that it needed to look like there was kind of like a faceplate for the doorbell. Like there's kind of like, I don't know, hardware that it sits on. And then there's going to be like the bulbous like part of it to like show that it's like, this is a bell. And then there's going to be the little button in the center of that you press. And I actually used theirs from For Rent. It's like the toddler potty. So I used that. So it's kind of like just a bowl. And I used that along with the actual handbell from Debug. So I stuck the wooden part of that into that toddler potty. So that's like the doorbell part. And then the actual hardware that it sits on is actually a sunscreen bottle, I think. So I don't know if like you actually played in this bit. If you played on this lot, I don't know if it would work. I think it would like, maybe they might freak out and like grab the hardware and like use it as sunscreen. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah. So I don't think this is like a build that you can actually like play in. But if you want to download it, it is on the gallery and you can check it all out fully. Again, we're going to be checking out the other 2 apartments next week's YouTube video. But again, I knew that I wanted to use items and also use like clusters of items in this build. Like put them all together to make it look like it would fit the time period. Like for instance, I also found on the gallery, there were these like paintings that I guess a sim had made of letters and numbers. And then I also took like that dinosaur painting frame and I sized all of it down and I just like added it all together to show that like her apartment is 29E and his apartment is 29F. And then the other 2 apartments are listed there too. So I knew that I wanted to add in little touches like that. Also on the ceiling, which unfortunately, I don't think it actually showed when Pacific Creative had toured this build, but I put string lights on the ceiling, which I don't know if those are necessarily accurate for the time period. I feel like the bulbs would have probably been a little bit bigger and stuff like that, but I added that along with handbells. Which I grabbed those handbells off the gallery and I put those kind of connected to the lights, kind of like as a nod to ring them bells. Like maybe it was more of like a winter decoration that they had in each of the hallways or something. Maybe the super had like put it up, something like that. But I just wanted there to be just a little new extra nod to the song there. So that's kind of what I did there. Another thing that I was like super, super proud of is the balconies. There's balconies for each of the apartments. And Shirley DeVore's parents, that apartment, I have it set up so there's kind of like a little outdoor space that they have on the balcony that anyone can kind of go into, but then there's also kind of like a divider. And then I have it so that there's another door into the DeVore apartment. So Shirley's mom might like go out there and she might like have a little drink and she might lay down on a little lounger, but it's like separate from the other area, if that makes sense. Even though there's really no difference between, it's like one balcony, but I kind of like split it. And then for Norms, I have the new love blanket down. There's some pillows. There's a cute little fountain, which you probably would be allowed to like mount that on the wall. Like in real life, you'd probably get in trouble, but I don't know, maybe. I don't have a balcony, so I don't know. I'm not that hoity-toity. But I don't know. I just knew that I wanted there to be like nods to the family's personalities. Like for instance, I actually got this one off of the gallery, but in the DeVore household, there is on top of the TV set, there is an ashtray with some cigarettes in it. And I am not promoting smoking here. If you are a smoker, I do hope that you can eventually quit. I have smokers in my family who have quit, and I have seen like so much progress for them. And I know it's such a very hard habit to quit. So not promoting it here, but I felt like it is part of the time period. So I did add it in. And I found it from the gallery. I'll mention that creator down below. And I was like, oh my God, this looks like perfect. So I wanted to have all of these different nods to this time period. And I just knew I just needed to include everything. Like for instance, like the tiles on the floor, they might not necessarily be something that you would want now, like this current time period, but it definitely would have fit in that time period, whether it's like tile or linoleum. Like these colors are not what you're gonna go for now, but they're definitely something that you would see in the 70s. Like the green cabinets in the DeVore household. I'm not showing the bathrooms in this speed build, but we will look at it when we get into like the little tour that I'll do. And again, you could look at this on the gallery. I'll post photos on Instagram. And I don't know. I just knew that things had to be very 70s for this. And like listening to the music was a huge help for this. I also decided that Norm is going to be a little bit of a musician. So maybe there's some interest there that I've added in. You could see that Shirley has already like tried to move in a lot of her stuff. So she has her shoes under her nightstand, like stuff like that. And I don't know. I just wanted this to be very representative of my song. And I hope it was. I was so excited to watch Pacific tour it. So Pacific Creative just recently finished all of the tours of this. And it was so cool to see what everyone had come up with. There were so many talented builders in this collaboration. A lot of them my favorite Sims builders ever. And it was just so cool to see what everyone had come up with and what songs they had chosen. And it was very interesting because like Pacific had even said it was a little intimidating to ask a lot of us to build for her collaboration, because she's kind of asking you to be vulnerable, to like pick a song that, even if it's not your favorite song, it's like a song that might mean something to you, and then to build something off of that. That's like a very vulnerable thing to ask somebody to do. And I was just honored that I was included in that group of people, and to build something like this that, yeah, kind of does have meaning to me. It was, I don't know, it was just very exciting and unlike anything that I've ever built in The Sims, and probably will in the future. It was just very exciting to be a part of this. So Pacific Creative, thank you so much. I do just want to say it was very fun to do a lot of this. Like to decide the ceiling paint, to decide what swatches I was going to do for the walls, what specific furniture I was going to do for each person. It was just so exciting, especially because it's not really like my vibe. Like that's not something that I'm necessarily going to build with myself, like at this point in my life, or even in The Sims in general. Like that's not really what I do. So it was just very cool to do above and beyond, and the beyond being not necessarily like to my liking, but it was definitely something that would fit for this time period. It was just very cool. I did mention earlier, I live in a New York City apartment myself. I don't have a balcony, unfortunately. I'm not on the 29th floor, I'll tell you that much. And I don't know. It was very exciting to kind of just like blend in the different experiences that I have from stories that I've heard and like photos that I've seen, and like even, I don't know, just like firsthand accounts from my parents living in New York City, and my own experience of living in New York City, and like how my apartment might compare to this. And I knew from the apartments that I've seen from family members who are with us still or who are not with us any longer, I knew that there were things that I needed to include. Like you'll see that there's kind of like a tin sort of ceiling, which is very much a nod to my grandfather's apartment. I feel like the apartment, one of the ones that you'll see next week, is very reminiscent of my grandmother's apartment, which I'll speak more on. But I don't know. It was just like very exciting. And also, going back to the doorbells that I had created, I do need to update y'all. You might remember that I had mentioned that we have a new downstairs neighbor who is becoming a little much. At first, we kind of believed this neighbor that they were just going through something at their last apartment and their neighbor above them was not very nice and would purposefully bang on their floor or whatever if they heard their TV or anything like that. But now this neighbor is kind of claiming that we're doing the same things, and we didn't even know this neighbor moved in, and we didn't hear them at all. Like we still have yet to have heard them from their own apartment, but it's gotten to the point where they're pounding on our door all the time. They're yelling at us through our door anytime that they hear any noise. And there's been moments like where we've been here and we've heard the noise ourselves, and it's not us, it's somebody else in the building, but it's an older building. So you hear things that might not necessarily be above you or directly next to you, but might be from like an adjoining apartment or something like that. And that noise just travels. And I don't know. So I think maybe this neighbor is not necessarily used to living in an older New York City apartment, and they have become, I don't know, not violent, but they've been kind of nasty to us, especially like through the door, because we've gotten to the point where we're not opening the door anymore. We're not even going to be speaking to this neighbor. We've already let our management, like the people in charge, know that this is happening and it's ongoing. And we have owned up to points that have been maybe loud. So for instance, like my boyfriend had dropped a yerba mate, which is kind of like, I don't know, it's like maybe this size. That's a glass of iced tea, but that is kind of like a tea drink, like an energy drink that's canned, and that had fallen from kind of far up in our pantry. And we had said like, look, we accidentally dropped this, like it was not on purpose, like we didn't hear you, we're sorry it disturbed you, but like it wasn't on purpose. And I heard it because I was in the bathroom when Andy had dropped it, and then immediately they were up and knocking on our door. And there was another time where like I had dropped my phone off of my chest. I was laying down on the couch and fell asleep and it fell off. Or like we've like grabbed a blanket off the couch and forgot that like the remote was on it and that had fallen. But like nothing that was like huge or like majorly disturbing. Like stuff that like I would have been like, oh, they dropped something upstairs and it was loud. But this person just like cannot let it go, and has gotten to the point where they'll come up and say that we are like sick in the head, or we have to take our medication, or we're doing this like purposefully because we hate them. And I don't know, it's been really stressful, and we've had really bad neighbors in the past who are thankfully no longer here. They have moved, thankfully, and we just really don't want another situation like that with another neighbor. So we ended up getting a video doorbell. And thankfully, this neighbor has not come up like a week before we had installed this new doorbell, and they haven't come up since. So hopefully it continues to stay that way. Hopefully we're not disturbing them in any way, because like we don't mean to drop anything. We don't mean to be overly loud, but we definitely know that it has to come from somebody else's apartment if they're even hearing anything. And hopefully it all stops. And hopefully if it doesn't stop, it'll be found on this camera thing now. But I don't know. If you've been following along this story, if you've only been watching on YouTube, because I've talked about it a bit on my Twitch channel, you'll be updated, and I'll keep you updated as time goes on. This is what New York City living is, folks. But yeah, next week we will check out the other two apartments from this build, and I don't know, we are kind of nearing the end of this portion of the speed build here. So why don't we jump into the actual build, and I'll show you both of these apartments. So here we are in San Myshuno on the Fountain View penthouse lot, which is where I built 5 Riverside Drive in New York. And this is apartment 29E, and this is apartment 29F. So this is the DeVore household, and this is the Saperstein household. You can see his is a little smaller. He's got a smaller little balcony over here, and theirs is larger over here. It kind of just looks like there's a little seating area, and then there's this place for the parents to just kind of like chill out. And then over here, we've got the Love Struck blanket, we've got a bike, we've got the fountain, this is kind of like their space for Shirley and Norm. You can see here, this is the hallway, and we'll go in a little bit further. We've got mailboxes over to the side. We've got the elevator. We've got the trash chute. We've got radiator under the window. We have the cardboard dance floor out to look like protection for the floor. We've got some items that we have in the hall that we're like actively moving things over, but we'll go in here to apartment 29E over here. So here is the kitchen. You know, we've got like the dated tile backsplash, the countertops, everything like that. There is a little dining area with the mirror over here. Obviously, maybe she was on the phone. Shirley DeVoe's mother. We have this little bathroom here for everyone. So we've got the bathtub, we've got the toilet, we've got the sink. Looks like we're living in here, you know? We have a little bar area back here. We have the living room with access to the balcony. Of course, we've got the ashtray. But this I feel like looks like what it would look like. We have the DeVoe parents' room. Maybe this is a photo of Shirley when she was younger. You know, the father, maybe he has all of his trophies. Maybe he was a sports guy. Maybe they were high school sweethearts. I don't know. The mom, obviously, maybe she's journaling or whatever. She has her hand cream, you know. And then this is their ensuite bathroom. So like not much to it, but I feel like maybe it's a little dated. Maybe they said, we will upgrade this at some point, but never did. And then here is Shirley's bedroom. Of course, we've got all the trinkets that she's got from traveling. She's got photos with friends and stuff. And then, of course, here is all the frames that she had taken off the wall, and the nails are still up. You can see she took some from this side. She took some over here. This lamp looks like it could be kind of like a bell. She's got the lava lamp. She's got all this crap, basically, from her travels and from before. And she has now started moving over to apartment 29F, which is Norm's apartment. And obviously, like, this is some of the frames that she's had up. This is some of the frames that she's had up. This is where that vinyl player, which you can see in the hall here, will move over to this space over here. This is why this item might not necessarily fit in his apartment. We've got his kitchen. He looks a little, again, hoity-toity. He's got a little bit more money, maybe. Here is his bedroom. Maybe he plays the violin. So we've got a space for Shirley to move her things in. And that's basically these two apartments. I had such a fun time making all these little nods, making it look like the 70s. And I think I did a very good job. I'm really proud of this one. And again, these are the two apartments on the other side that you will see next week. So if you're looking forward to that, let me know in the comments down below. But I had such a good time being part of this. Go check out Pacific Creative. You can check her out on YouTube. You can see all of the other builds for everyone that she invited in the collab have posted. Again, thank you to Pacific Creative for inviting me for this. But I will catch you next week to look out the other two apartments, but have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll catch you later. Bye-bye.